G'day guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Wildkard. Thank you for watching the greatest sport in the world, that is rugby, and watch my channel for a little bit of extra rugby content. I really do appreciate it. It is today, Tuesday, which means it's time to read some rugby news. We have quite a bit of news this week actually. So first up, World Rugby has actually made some amendments to the interpretations of the laws in some sense. That's going to be implemented from January 1st, and this will affect the Six Nations and potentially affect the Rugby World Cup. So the biggest change obviously is the adding of a shot clock when it comes to penalty kicks and conversions and the scrum. So let's have a look at the exact kind of like changes. So the shot clock will be placed for a conversion, which will be 90 seconds, and 60 seconds for a penalty. This is already the time frame that's given to the players currently, but there's obviously no shot clock, and it's kind of like at the referee's discretion of whether or not the player has taken the allocated time. So the amount of time that's given to the player has not been changed. It's just now will be strictly implemented in the game. And also any sort of time wasting will be instantly sanctioned for a free kick. And also obviously going to lineouts should not be delayed. And I probably will add one more thing is players wasting time walking back to the kickoff after a try has been scored. So that's something that probably should be added in there, like actually added in there. But that is what it is. And finally, there will be a shot clock being put for 30 seconds for a scrum to be taken. This is something that's actually really good because with the penalty kicks, the conversions, it's actually, even though there's no shot clock, the referee generally don't allow the players take more than a minute or two. They tend to keep an eye on the clock, even though it's not like strictly enforced. But when it comes to scrummaging, it does take too long. 30 seconds is way more than enough. If you watch some of the older rugby games, the ball goes in and out in 30 seconds, not just pack in 30 seconds. Right, so if I had to go in and out in less than 30 seconds, so yeah, it is kind of like a good thing to speed up the scrum a little bit, and also just bring that fatigue factor into the game, which will make the game more exciting because players will make more mistakes when they're fatigued. And sometimes, a lot of times, it does look like, especially the big boys in the 4-pack, just taking the opportunity of the scrum pack to take a bit of break essentially. So that's really good. Next thing, they want to have lesser reliance on the TMO, which I think is a good thing, but they really didn't go hard enough, I feel like here. They basically said that if the incident is not clear and obvious, the TMO don't step in. So sometimes we've seen situations where the TMO calls up and say, there might be a high tackle, and then it's not really clear and they just play it on. That would not happen anymore. If the TMO is in doubt, then it's just straight up no. It has to be really clear and obvious for the TMO to even judge it. I do feel like they should take a page out of soccer. I think they should have gone further, like the soccer, where the soccer TMO can only address issues happens inside the box. They should do something similar like this. Issue that happen maybe inside the 22, or when the try is scored, or by the request of a referee. Outside of that, the TMO should not be involved in any way, shape, or form. If the referee misses an incident on the field, bad luck. Poop happens, right? Everybody makes mistakes, and this will also take pressure off of the referees as well, because hey, they're not going to pick up everything now. The TMO is not involved, whereas nowadays it's kind of like expected that everything to be picked up because you have the TMO there to address the issue, and so referee gets like judged more critically as well, given that situation. So also they're going to have fewer water breaks, to just not feel like having the water breaks set during the time with kicks that are taking place to just like minimize time wasting. Also, this is a big one, I think, especially for the Wallabies, for the Australian players. They're going to penalize players for what's called the negative play actions. So this is obviously some technical stuff, obviously like trapping players in the ruck, not aiming at the play in the ball. For the first arriving player, the jackler not aiming at playing the ball, just to slowing the ball down sort of thing. So there's some of this cynical stuff that players do just to slow the game down will be more penalized. And also this is one that's really important. That's something that I really hate to see in the Wallabies, like hold the ball or walk out with the ball at penalties just to waste time. Yeah, like Wallabies does this a lot. Nick White does this. I think everybody have seen it. yeah, hopefully this is a good thing to be addressed. So yeah, I really hate it when I see it. Some people call it gamesmanship, but it's just wasting time, to be honest. Not really gamesmanship, just wasting time for everybody. And finally, they also wanted to penalize players for putting their own weight on the ground. This is something that kind of always the case, but they kind of just like, hammer it down a little bit. Stay on your feet. Basically just staying on your feet. So pretty stuff that's just being like pushed forward a bit more. And finally, they clarified what's called the deliberate knock-on. So there's a lot of misinterpretations specifically in Australia that it's called deliberate knockdown. Like I was told it's called deliberate knockdown. But there's no such thing as deliberate knockdown. There's only deliberate knock-on. You can actually knock the ball down deliberately as long as the ball is knocked down backwards. It's not a penalty, and it's still the case. Okay, that has not been changed. What has been changed or clarified a bit is that if the referee deems that the player who knocked the ball forward can recover the ball, then there will not be has a legitimate attempt to recover the ball, then it will not be considered deliberate knock-on. So yeah, that is interpretation. It doesn't matter whether you knock it up, knock it down, knock it left, knock it right. It's all about the interpretation of the possibility of regathering the ball. That's what they look at. I also think that, again, this is similar to what we just mentioned before. I didn't think they clarified this law enough, because one of the main thing is an accidental deliberate knock-on. That's something that they really should have addressed, and they failed to do so. We've seen this a lot. A player going for a tackle, and he knocks the ball on, because the other player, the ball carrier, tries to pass the ball away, and it's a yellow card for the tackler, right? Should that be a yellow card? If they it's not clarified here, but hopefully what this means is that will be the case. That would not be a yellow card anymore, because you're making a tackle and you've accidentally knocked the ball on out of the ball carrier's hand. So yeah, I think that should be actually addressed. It's not addressed, but hopefully they will fix that in the future. With that being said, the referees have also come out and announced what's called the International Rugby Match Officials, which is a representative body for the referees, and they basically aimed at supporting the referees on and off the field, liaisoning a lot of the laws to World Rugby, something that needs to be changed, things that need to change, things to be adjusted. They will talk to to World Rugby, and also having like a uniform body to look out for all the referees to make sure that everything is interpreted. Everything is done like. In unison, everything is, what I mean. So it's make sure that all the laws are interpreted the same. We've seen a lot that Northerners and Southern referees interpret rules differently. This body basically aims to address that issue as well. So it's really, really positive for me as well. This is something that a lot of people have been asking for. So yeah, some of the key objectives from the IRMO is that they obviously liaisoning the laws of the game relating to game-related protocols, high performance standards to World Rugby, and also for the match officials, just trying to, exactly like I just said, balancing out the expectations for everybody. They're also looking at protect the mental and physical well-being of the referees. They look at promoting refereeing for younger players, younger officials, and also looking at promoting the value of the game, positive, values of the game to every part of the world. So that's kind of like what the referee representative body does, which is really, really good. And with that being said, there's some really good Six Nations referees has been announced, and it's noticeably something has been done here as well. A lot of the Southerner referees has been put into the Six Nations, and obviously we've had this issue where the referees are different, drastically different between the Northerners and Southerners in the last couple of years. So I hope that by injecting all the Southern referees, mixing them with the Northern referees in the Six Nations, will unify all the differences that is currently occurring, so which is really, really good. So let's quickly go to the referees. First game, Wales, Ireland, Carl Dickinson from England. England versus Scotland, Paul Williams get that. Italy versus France, Matthew Carley from England. Barnsley gets Ireland versus France. Andrew Brace gets Scotland, Wales. James Dolman gets England versus Italy, which is really good. So James Dolman do need do need to improve on his refereeing. I think Mike Anderson, another referee, needs a lot of improvement. Gets Italy, Ireland. Matthew Reynolds, the greatest referee in the history of the world, gets Wales versus England. Nika Ashu Kelly gets France versus Scotland. And Damon Murphy gets Italy versus Wales. Should have given him like England versus Wales or something, man. He deserves a lot better than that. Ben O'Keefe gets England, France. Well deserved. Ben O'Keefe is the best referee in New Zealand. Luke Pearce gets Scotland, Ireland. Best referee in England. Probably best referee in England. Maybe Barnsley. I think Barnsley might be the best referee in England. Angus Gardner, best referee in Australia, gets Scotland, Italy. Like I said, Gardner should probably get a bit better than Scotland, Italy. Nick Berry gets France versus Wales. Another high pressure point for Nick. He's going to have to work very hard for this one. Jaco Piper, the only South African referee, gets Ireland, England, the big finisher to the Six Nations. And he has Yonka in the TMO. So yeah, old mates working together will be just fine. Obviously, the fallout continues from Eddie Jones and Borthwick exchange turnover at the England Rugby. So Sir Clive Woodward has come out and made some of his assessments with, Borthwick taking over England. I think he just took over last week officially. So he basically came out and stated 3 points that he thinks Borthwick needs to work on. He wanted Borthwick to improve the team culture, less rhetoric from England camp, part of the culture, and also less turnover of the players, something that Eddie Jones does a lot. So he thinks that bringing a more positive culture to the team will be really good. And also he thinks that selection is going to be a thing. He criticized Eddie Jones in the past for not selecting bringing up more younger players. So he thinks Borthwick will fix that. Thirdly and finally, he really thinks that Borthwick needs to decide how England wants to play. And he does point it out that the way clubs play, which is what Borthwick has been very successful at, is different from international test rugby. So something that Borthwick will be a very big challenge for him to kind of like sort out going into Six Nations. Obviously, Eddie Jones had another interview last week. He reckons that he didn't think that he did anything. He didn't regret what he was doing. He said that he wouldn't do anything differently. Despite the fact that the week before he did come out and say that maybe he did do something wrong. But, last week he kind of thought that he was planning for the Rugby World Cup. He has a plan and he wouldn't have done anything differently going into the Rugby World Cup. He had another think about it. But yeah, I think the most important part is that there's a lot of like positive thing about Eddie Jones, despite all the negativity from Woodward. The people who actually works with Eddie Jones has a lot of positive things to say about them. So Borthwick obviously came out and talked about how his relationship with Eddie Jones was, and he talked about the 2019 Rugby World Cup, how Eddie Jones, where England beat New Zealand, how Eddie Jones just walked into the office and laid down 3 points that needs to be done as he hammered the table. He told the story how he just hammered the table and just really, made it clear for everybody what they need to do to beat New Zealand. And it worked out exactly how everybody wanted. So he talked about that. He wanted to bring that clarity into the national team as well. So a lot of positive stuff from people that actually work with Eddie. Unlike Woodward, who just thinks everybody who pants Eddie Jones as this like evil person. But everybody who works with Eddie it's overwhelmingly positive about him. Even Borthwick was taking over the rugby team. So he talked about that story as well. And furthermore, Sinclair came out also last week, talked about an incident, obviously referring to an incident, and it also relates to Eddie Jones, how Eddie Jones treated him. So basically, Sinclair used to be known as a bit of a hothead, and basically Gatlin told him, basically coined him as the time bomb, as someone who will give away the penalty any given time, sort of like sooner or later he's going to give out a penalty sort of thing, or lose his temper. So yeah, basically he was like under a lot of like spotlight, under a lot of pressure, and then he eventually fell into the trap set by Warren Gatlin. I think he got penalized or something. But anyway, yeah, he got anyway. So he did fall into the trap. Essentially letting his team down a little bit. He did feel really bad afterwards. But he did talk about Eddie Jones' reaction after he sort of like felt like he let the nation down and everybody was like being very negative towards him on social media. Eddie Jones basically came out and told him that Eddie Jones basically looked after him like a father figure and basically told him that what did Eddie Jones say? Basically told him that, mate, I got your back, don't stress, you're going to be a great player, I got your back. So from your head coach, that's pretty much all you wanted to hear, right? You just let the team down, you're feeling really bad. He was sitting in front of the bus like a neglected child, and Eddie Jones just goes out to him and says, "We got your back, mate. You know, you're going to be a great player." And Sinclair also talked about how Eddie Jones took him in before he was even like a starting player at his club, just to, you know, because Eddie Jones saw the potential in him. So yeah, again, really positive stuff about Eddie Jones and from the people that actually work with him when it comes to these stories. So also Steve Hansen from New Zealand, obviously the former All Blacks head coach, has come out, made some of his assessment on Eddie Jones' firing. He did talk about he did feel like Eddie Jones may have looked too far away to the World Cup and neglected the November Test series, and as a result, he may have overplayed it. But he did think that it's really kind of like a mistake for the RFU, for England to fire Eddie Jones because it's too close to the World Cup, and they should have trusted Eddie Jones with his process because Eddie Jones has delivered results with his planning and with his strategy, long-term plan and long-term strategy, especially when it comes to the World Cup. Steve Hansen knows this because he's the one that lost in 2019 to Eddie Jones in the quarterfinals and in the semifinals. So yeah, he also speaks very highly of Eddie Jones, and he thinks that Eddie Jones is a incredibly passionate person. So yeah, overwhelming positive stuff for Eddie Jones. Anyway, next up, there's more Premiership club issues that's been kind of raised the last week. So following obviously the Wasps going under and the Warriors going under, now that there are some warnings being issued for the London Irish and the Harlequins for potentially not going bankrupt as well. So the London Irish is one that has been, they call them basically the high risk clubs. London Irish basically has been having very low turnovers, and for the Harlequins, they've taken on quite a bit of debt recently. I think how much was it? 40 something million, I think it was. How much was it? 48 million in 2021. So both these clubs are currently looking very financially unstable. So yeah, some warnings be issued, and Harlequins is a big team. So anyway, let's move on to New Zealand now. Richie Mo'unga has officially signed in Japan. He will be leaving. He has talked about this a while now. He will be leaving New Zealand at the end of the Rugby World Cup, and he will be going to the Toshiba Brave Loopers with Todd Blackadder as the coach. Ethan Blackadder's dad as the head coach. So yeah, he will be going there alongside Shannon Frizzell. Shannon Frizzell. Yeah, so they will be trying to play in Japan together. Next up, we've got RTS Roger Tuivasa-Sheck looking at potentially returning to NRL following his lackluster year this year in 2022. So basically he's come out and stated that if 2023, basically the World Cup, if he's not getting anywhere prominent, if he's not getting any more prominence with the All Blacks, he will be returning to rugby league. And this, reported in Australia here that he probably not going to be returning to the Warriors because the Warriors currently already fill the salary cap, but he most likely will potentially find a place in the Dolphins under Wayne Bennett. So yeah, that's the rumor for RTS going into next year. New Zealand Rugby also came out and talked about how they felt like they're letting the fans down a little bit. I mean, anyway, the fact that Super Round in 2023 is played in Melbourne again tells you how much you care about your fans, New Zealand Rugby. So yeah, at least they're recognizing that they have been letting the fans down. So Tomas Ramos, someone that copped a cited was last week's side. He's the fullback and not the goal kicker, but one of the prominent goal kickers for the French national team. He was cited for poking someone in the eyes and for a headbutt, I think, for a red card headbutt. Yeah, so he had a red card for headbutt, and then also cited for a eye contact. So I think so anyway, so he had a red card and eye contact, and last week it was said that he could potentially get banned for up to a year for such egregious incidences. But World Rugby has decided to go easy on him. They issued a 5-week ban for the eye contact and a 4-week suspension for the red card, and he's allowed to serve both suspensions at the same time. So it's actually only a 5-week ban. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on that. So he will be available to play for France for the Six Nations and obviously the Rugby World Cup. And yeah, this will be more talks about potentially hosting a British and Irish Lions match in Qatar before coming to Australia. So yeah, anyway, it is what it is. There's a lot of talk about how the FIFA World Cup was very successful in Qatar, and Qatar wants to host sevens tournaments. And I mean, obviously the FIFA World Cup was a bit of a nightmare. People were living in shipping containers for $400 a night. But that's the World Cup. And for one test match of British and Irish Lions tour, you're not gonna see like millions of people show up for that. So I think there will be enough hotel space for that, and it will be a nice trip for everybody to go have a look in Qatar. I mean, obviously the human rights issues there, that's another thing. But yeah, it is what it is. If business makes sense, you do what you have to do. So yeah, this finally in Japan, the season has kicked off. Israel Folau came out and scored 3 tries. The caveat with this is that Izzy's team has been relegated to the B League. Yeah, so he scored 3 tries in the B League. Whilst, yeah, it's not the ideal place to be honest. B League in Japan. And also Tom Banks. I didn't actually realize this as well. Tom Banks is playing in Japan as well currently, and is also in the 2nd division. So yeah, that's not. I'm more concerned about Tom Banks and Israel Folau because Izzy is obviously playing for Tonga. But Banks will potentially be a Wallaby selection player, and playing the B League against like almost amateurs in Japan is not really a good way to keep yourself, I don't know, ready for international test rugby. Like, it's not really a good place for you to develop as a player, right? Yeah, so this is not really good news for me. And as a result, I think Tom Banks probably will not play for the Wallabies this year at all, even as an international selected player, because yeah, playing the B League is really going to hurt your chances for the Wallaby. But what it does tell you is they do pay good money in Japan. You mean Tom Banks obviously getting more money playing the B League than he does playing Super Rugby. That's why he went there. So yeah, interesting. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching this video. Let me know your thoughts on any of the articles. Like, comment, and subscribe. Happy New Year coming up. This is the final show. Please make sure you subscribe so you don't get dropped off the I don't get dropped off the recommended list, and I will never see you again. But anyway, have a good one, guys. Cheers.